Emmett Morehead was better than anyone expected, throwing for 4 touchdown passes, but it was not enough as BC's defense came out flat and allowing Duke to score 38 points. On today's show, we're going to look at why this loss happened. We're going to get into Morehead or Djokovic for the last 3 games, and we're going to get into tonight's tip-off for BC men's basketball. All of this and more on today's episode of Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I'm joined today by Mitch Wolfe, as always, and we're going to get into Friday night's loss. It feels like it was like a week and a half ago at this point, but we're here to talk about it. We're going to process a game that didn't have the same feel as I expected. Mitch, how's it going?
I was going to say, this is about as good as I've felt coming off a loss this entire season. Maybe besides the Clemson game, just because it wasn't that bad of a blowout. But yeah, I mean, I think this is certainly one of the more interesting games. It actually, I would say it was competitive for the most part. There were some lulls there, but it was, an interesting game, especially for certain people who took the Duke spread.
Oh. Yeah, nope.
Nobody on this podcast though. Nobody did that.
Nope. Yeah, well, yeah, it did. It felt like it was a game that had you left feeling something, right? Like so many games like the Wake Forest
besides
game,
existential dread, that is.
Other than existential dread. The UConn game, you felt like, okay, there's something to build off here. Finally, we see something for the future. And that was encouraging. And we're not going to get into the plays. If you want to read recaps, you can go find recaps anywhere. We're diving in and talking about what happened in this game. And I think the big takeaways, first of all, we'll get into Emmett Morehead in our second segment, but let's get into Joseph Griffin, because Joseph Griffin Jr., who going into the season, there was a lot of talk about this kid being a really dynamic wide receiver. It took a little while to see him get involved. He's a true freshman, came in over the summer. I don't know what happened to Jaden Williams, but he's not there. Now he has his spot, and he looked every bit the future star for BC. Yeah,
and it's been really interesting watching him, take a bigger role in this offense, because he played a lot more during the Clemson game, but most of his garbage time he didn't get any targets. But since that bye week, he's been a huge part of the offense in terms of his snaps going up, his targets going up, and then this game finally exploding for yards and touchdowns. And for weeks, I guess for years almost, I've been saying, Jaden Williams has been miscast as this offense's X receiver, because his game is not, winning contested balls on the outside. And that's all Joseph Griffin did, and this offense needed that. I think I wrote in the 3 stars that, for a young quarterback like Morehead, having a guy like Zay Flowers who can get pretty wide open and make plays after the catch is important, but also having a guy that you can just throw it up to and be like, just please go win this. Those are really the 2 weapons I think you most need for a young quarterback. And, he's got both those guys, and we saw how well he was able to attack this Duke defense, which I said, attack their cornerbacks if you can, because they're pretty weak there. And that's what BC was able to do. And that's where they found their most success.
Yeah, I was very impressed. And again, as you said, you take it with a grain of salt, because it's Duke's defense and they're not particularly strong in the secondary. And then the other positive out of this game, and we'll get into what went wrong in a second, because I'm sure folks are going, why are we talking about positives when we lost? But I've been talking about negatives for about a month and a half straight, and I'm going to get into some positive stuff first. It's Alex Broome, which we've seen pieces of before, but I thought he looked particularly strong in this game.
Yeah, you can tell he just has a different gear of explosiveness than Patrick Garwo, and no slander to Patrick Garwo, who's been a very solid, consistent player. I think this year just the lack of an offensive line has really hurt his ability to get anything going. But Broome just from his ability to stop and start, get up to accelerate to top speed really quickly was super important for this team in this game. And I was really surprised how well BC ran the ball. I know if you look at the box score, it doesn't look that impressive because of the sack yardage, but and Pat Garwo's yards per carry wasn't that great, but when they ran the ball, it didn't look like the Rutgers game. Like they were actually able to, get some forward momentum, get the running backs past line of scrimmage and pick up some yards when they needed to. So, again, we're trying to find some little victories here. And, the fact that the run game was actually, at the bare minimum competent in this game was a positive sign, I would say.
And I think it all reflected on the fact that they were able to score 31 points. Like you have to have at least some complimentary football in there when you have especially when you have a freshman quarterback back there, a redshirt freshman. Now, all right, let's get into what the fans want, which is the negatives, and get into this defense, which came out flat and played flat for quite a while. Mitch, what happened I want to give credit, first of all, and I'm sure you're going to get into this. Duke's offensive line was very, very good. But, it looked like the defense was playing flat through that whole game.
Yeah, it's tough with flat. So I think one part of it is that when you have a short week, you have less time to practice, you have less time for, physical practice. So, we saw some issues with, missed tackles, especially early in the game. And I'm kind of going to pin that on, having a short week and the coaching staff not wanting to risk more injuries, especially in the secondary, because they're kind of banged up there and the linebacker group is decently thin. So they didn't want to risk injury. So I get it, but that's kind of the risk you run when you when you don't tackle or hit live as much in practice. So I'm kind of wondering if that might be the reason for it. Again, I think we do have to give some credit to Duke of just having, like I said, like a very efficient offense. They did find some explosive plays. Obviously, the big run by Riley Leonard. I mean, I'll eat crow. Like Leonard was a much better runner than I expected. Obviously on that big zone read run for a touchdown, was able to create with some scrambles, make some guys miss, which was huge. But yeah, I mean, you just saw how their offense was able to stay on schedule by having a good run game behind a good offensive line. They never really threw the ball downfield. I think they attempted like 3 passes over 20 yards downfield. I think they completed one of them or something. So they kept everything short and it was efficient. So, and that BC, the other part that I want to talk about is that because of special teams penalties, that gave BC's offense really bad field position. They couldn't get anything going. And then they had short punts, which gave Duke short field position. So, defense did not play well. 38 points is not good. But they were, again, set up in bad positions by special teams, which led to bad offense, which led to shorter fields for the Duke offense. And I know we're trying to, the defense didn't play well enough. Like it is what it is. 38 points is not acceptable. That's not how you win football games. But in the final quarter, they did come up with some big stops to give the BC offense some opportunities to go down and score and make this a game and, cover that 9.5 point spread. Or that's what it was when some people took it. It obviously went up to like 12.5. So BC covered the most recent spread, but no problem thanks to that field goal. But I mean, those last few drives in the fourth quarter where they were able to get those stops were impressive. But for the first 3 quarters, when you're allowing the Duke offense to just go up and down the field, not tackling well, that was really the big thing. Again, Duke's offensive line was just pretty much controlling the line of scrimmage in the run game and the pass game. So that's where the biggest problems were. You saw a few coverage busts, especially when BC tried to rotate into more zone coverages. Sometimes those plays just get busted by a good offensive play call. A lot of like cross field motion where guys would just get caught up in the trash and they couldn't stay in phase on the guy they were supposed to be covering. That was a big issue. So, I think there were some, encouraging signs towards the end of the game, but at the end of the day, just 38 points that's not how you play winning football.
All right. In a moment, we're going to move ahead and look ahead because there's a big question mark coming up for BC football. And Jeff Hafley's had some answers, and we're going to debate whether this is the right answer or not. We'll get into that in just a moment. Now, These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you need to do is head on over to LinkedIn, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This is Locked On BC. AJ Black here. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all who are following. We are one follower short for 600 followers on our YouTube page. I want you all, if you're listening right now, I want you to become the 600 follower subscriber on our YouTube page. We're hoping to do it by the start of this basketball season. We can do it by 7:00 tonight. So hit that subscribe button, become our subscriber, and get BC news and videos sent directly to your YouTube page. It's a great deal. All right. Now, Mitch, the big question mark heading into this weekend was the quarterback. And, we knew that Phil Dracovic was not going to play. Well, we kind of knew, and then it was confirmed by Pete Thamel, who obviously gets the scoops for everything.
The angel of death for BC football.
Yeah. I always find it funny. He's a national reporter and he just gets BC news. It's like, I love that he gets all that. I'm sure he's like, cool. But Emmett Morehead, I think I'm going to eat crow because I thought he definitely was not going to be ready to do what he was able to do. But the guy goes out there and throws 300 plus yards, 4 touchdowns, and he's sacked twice or 3 times, but
technically 5 times, but 3 of them were attributed to the offensive line. So 2 were really on him.
Okay. That being said, I thought he looked really good. And now we're heading into the last 3 games of our season. We don't know what Phil Dracovic's injury is because Jeff Hafley, be surprised, folks. Jeff Hafley's being very vague about it. And he said that he said twice now, he was very emphatic that if Dracovic is ready to go, he's going to be their quarterback. I don't agree with this. I think that I know he's your leader, but this season is lost. Like, there's nothing other to gain from this. I mean, other than if you want to give him some pride to go out on, you got to get Morehead out there, because as you saw on Friday, he grew as the game went on. He seemed to start to pick things up. He started to get more comfortable. If you're shooting to move ahead in 2023, Emmett Morehead has to start these last 3 games.
Yeah, it's a tough call because, I agree I think growth is a really good word for Morehead in this first start of his, because, on the first drive, his first real throw, or the first downfield throw, was really nowhere near the receiver. And the sideline reporter and the broadcast team was talking about how visibly nervous Morehead was to start. But by the end of the game, you saw him, just be so much more confident with running the offense. And, obviously, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, that's all well and good. I still think there is obviously a lot of room to grow for him. In this game specifically, I thought there were a lot of times, especially late in the game when BC was trying to mount a comeback, where I would have liked to see him be more aggressive. And I know we've kind of gotten on Dracovic for being too aggressive at times, but in the late half of the second half of the game, when you're down by that many points, just try something. Like, I'm not going to be mad if you make a mistake when you're trying to bring this team back when you're down by 2 scores or whatever. Him taking that big sack on 4th down. I know there were some offensive line busts, but throw it. Yeah, if it gets intercepted, it's fine. Like, you're probably actually going to gain yards by pinning the turned over offense back further on the field. And a lot of those great deep throws, they were really accurate, but we didn't really see him attack the intermediate middle part of the field. A lot of these are just like throw it up to the receiver and hope he catches, which they were very good throws. I'll give him that. And he, like you said, he got a lot more comfortable as the game went on. We're gonna if Jurkovec can't go and we see Morehead start against NC State, that's a completely different animal. That is a really talented, very experienced secondary that is, one of the best in the ACC, if not the country. So, we're gonna, we've talked about how bad Duke's secondary was. This is going to be a very different animal that Morehead faces if he starts on Saturday. I'm kind of assuming that. Actually, this is probably unfair to assume, but I feel like they're going to say that Jurkovec is still hurt just so they can, get out from under that cover. And then they can start him against Notre Dame. And then, some people might be like, all right, fine, give him the start against his former team. But if they do go back to Jurkovec, nobody's going to like it. I know that. But, I think that people are going to remember the great plays from Emmett Morehead's first start, but there were still a lot of plays that he left out there on the field that were endemic of a freshman making his first start. And, I get that Jurkovec has been very embattled. The other, and I'm wondering if this might even just help Jurkovec moving forward, is that this was the first game, I think, maybe of the entire season where the starting offensive line played every snap. They played every snap at the same position. And then, that's the first time that happened. And then this definitely has never happened before. None of them had a single penalty, which was remarkable. Yep. The one, I think, offensive penalty was a holding on George Takis on a Zay Flowers like jet sweep kind of play on the outside. So, I think we saw a lot of progression from the offensive line, which has been obviously this team's biggest issue. So I'm wondering if this is kind of that, and again, I talked about how Duke has a good defensive line and they were still able to get some pressure on the quarterback and, make some impact in the run game. But I'm wondering if the offensive line has maybe kind of finally found its footing that they can, start making some real forward progression in the last few games of the season. Which would be great.
That's what they
Baby
need.
Steps.
So, yeah. And I don't even want to guess because we don't know, because Halfley is not going to tell you.
Yeah. We're not going to know until, when is the game on Saturday? Probably 3:30.
3:30.
Yeah. So we won't know until, he usually does those at like around the time College Game Day is airing. So probably before the noon slate, if I had to imagine, or maybe he'll wait because whoever his BC sources wants to be like, hey, give us some more time.
Yeah. So we won't know. And I'm sure, I'm guessing that they're going to continue to not hammer him, but there's been some of the press has been asking him and he's said what he said, but I'm sure he's not going to tell you because it's not beneficial to the team for them to know who's going to be the quarterback. Right. Mm-hmm. At least in Halfway's eyes. All right. So yeah, this is the game that BC showed up on offense. This is what we finally saw, a game where the offense, they scored, what did I say, 21 points over the last 3 games total, I think, something like that. And they scored 31 in this one. So at least you can tip your hat to that. Still a lot of issues. And I'm glad you brought up special teams because that was such a major problem in that game. And it's been a very concerning issue with BC this year.
Well, it's every week it's something different. Like this week it was those penalties. I guess punting has been a consistent issue. Luckily there were no, absolute shanks this week, but none of the punts were that good. So that's an issue. And again, the penalties on the kickoff returns were the biggest issue in my opinion, which haven't really been a big issue to this point. So it's frustrating because again, every week there's something new that they have to fix.
Oh, before you go, Mitch, I want your thoughts on that first onside kick.
I'm fine with the decision to do an onside kick. I don't love that decision there, that play call of the onside kick. It's not a decision I would have made, but I get it. Try to catch them unawares. Unfortunately, they have the presence. It's Duke, so of course they do. They have the presence of mind to fair catch it so they can't get touched. Luckily, whoever was right by the guy who caught it, he didn't hit him and draw another 15-yard penalty. But I get it. I think you have some momentum on offense in the second half finally. So you try to capitalize on that momentum by hopefully getting a sudden change play. Get the offense the ball back, let them keep riding that momentum. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it. Onside kicks are especially. I don't think they can't. I guess they just still do the run up in college, but the onside kicks are just really hard to convert regardless of who you have. So I'm fine. I'm generally okay with the decision. It's not one I would have done. It's like basically a toss up for me, but I get the logic behind it.
All right, Mitch, where can people follow your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. Ideally, we'll have the rewatch pieces back this week. Unfortunately, Watch ESPN has kind of figured out my hack, apparently, to get the clips. So I'll have to kind of see if I can find a workaround this week. If not, we'll try to come up with some other type of content for the readers and subscribers to enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you, Mitch. In a moment, we're going to get into basketball. Well, I'm going to get into basketball because men's basketball tips off at Conti Forum tonight against Cornell, and we're going to get into everything you're going to want to know about that game because it's the start of a very exciting season in a pivotal one for Earl Grant. But before we get into that, BetOnline is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all of your latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. They've got college basketball, and if you're interested in BC versus Cornell, the opening line on that was BC minus 12.5. You can head over to BetOnline if that's something you're interested in putting wagers on. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Locked On BC, AJ Black here, and I'm here talking about men's basketball because I know a lot of folks out there are done talking about football, and I totally get that. That you are all hoping that this is going to be a magical season for men's basketball after a great end of the 2021-2022 campaign, where BC won 3 games in the ACC tournament, 2 games in the ACC tournament, and almost won a third, especially when they weren't predicted to win any. They beat Wake Forest, they beat Pitt. It was a really good end of the season. And now they bring in 4 highly recruited freshmen, Chaz Kelly, DJ Hand, Armani Mighty, and Prince Aligbe. And then Mason Madsen, who you see in your picture up there, is a 35% three-point shooter from Cincinnati, who should give BC the ability to stretch the floor a little bit, something they did not have at all last year. Now, BC opens their season tonight against Cornell. This is a game, BC starts the season like most basketball teams do with a couple cream puffs to start it off. And BC has no history against Cornell. I saw the notes given out by BC's sports information department. They haven't played Cornell since the 1960s, and they're 3-0 against this team. Now, BC will have be a little short staffed in this game, or short, their bench is going to be a little bit shorter. On Friday during their press conference, Earl Grant said that Quinton Post is going to be out for this game, center Quinton Post, and he has a injury on his foot. He's been practicing with the team, Earl Grant says, but he doesn't want to push him, and that makes sense. Like if you're playing a team, and I think Ken Palm has Cornell in the 300s. You can sit Quinton Post, especially when you have a deeper bench, which is what Earl Grant's saying. Like you got enough guys out there that can fill his role. So expect BC to go with smaller ball in this game because they don't really have a deep bench at the center position. If they're going to go with typical 5s, it's Post, it's Armani Mighty, and then you're going to have to kind of get a little bit creative after that. Maybe put TJ Bickerstaff at the 5, or play a couple, add another guard or forward or wing out there to fill that spot. So Post is out. The other injury, and we'll have to wait and see what's going on here, is that DeMar Langford, their star forward guard, is day-to-day. I almost said out. He's not out yet. Day-to-day with an ankle injury. He's been practicing as well, but he missed. It sounds like he missed their last 2 scrimmages because of his ankle injury, and we're not sure if Grant was not committal if he's going to play or not. Again, if it's to give him some rest and get him ready for some of the bigger games, you absolutely rest DeMar Langford. Okay, so there's a couple injuries there that you need to watch for, but as Grant said in his press conference, what he drove home is that this is a deeper team than BC's had in a long time. that they have guys that they feel can go out there and produce big minutes. He rattled off, Chaz Kelly in their scrimmage had like 12 points and like 6 assists. So he sounds like he's ready. DJ Hand, another scorer off the bench. And I'm telling you right now, Prince Aligbe is, I mentioned it on last week's episode, is probably going to be a starter this year. So you got a couple guys that are ready to go out there and play. And I think that's fine. That's great because you can manage these injuries. You don't need to go out there and push Quentin Post because you have no one else out there to play. You can get him his rest, get him to heal, and get him ready for those bigger games because you're going to need Quentin Post when you get to ACC play, when you get to Villanova, URI, some of these, the multi-team tournament in the Virgin Islands. You want him then. You don't need him against Cornell and some of these earlier games. So I think BC is in a good spot there. Now, as I said, it's a 12.5 point spread for this game. And it'll be interesting to see how BC comes out because, last year they did play, they were still only 13-20 on the season. They had those 2 wins in the ACC tournament, but you're going to have to show us. You have to show us that they're a good team. And I know that they won most of their out of conference games last year when they played these types of teams, other than Albany, which we're not going to talk about. But go out there and this is a team that needs to dominate these types of games. Honestly, this is a game where you want to see the freshmen get out there because and get major minutes because you don't want your starters out there, risking injuries against teams like Cornell. So hopefully BC's able to kind of just step on the throttle, put this game away early and get DJ Hand, get Chaz Kelly, let Armani Mighty, play a little bit. And hopefully that'll get them their win. But I have to say, this is the first time probably since the year of Kai Bowman and Jerome Robinson, the year that they made the NIT, that there's been any buzz about this program. The basketball team seems to have a palpable buzz, to steal the term of John Rothstein. And I think that's exciting. And we're going to continue talking about them throughout the season. And I'll be doing recaps. I'll be talking about the big moments of the games. Believe me, you can find that all here on Locked On BC. And I hope you check that out. Now, we're doing this live on YouTube. And hopefully you've hit that subscribe button already. If not, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit our 600th subscriber, and we're hoping that you will be that person to do that. Now, we've had some comments as the show goes on, and we'll wrap up our show with these comments. Thomas Edson says, "What have you heard about Mahogany in the portal?" I've heard nothing. And I have to say, there's a group of people out there that love to just throw out things and make rumors. I saw the BCI guys are saying it, and that's fine. They can say whatever they want. I am a credentialed media member, and I can't just deal in rumors. If I go and ask Christian Mahogany, I could get in trouble with BC. There's certain things I have to do in order to keep my credentials. So I have to be careful about that. Could he join the portal? Absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me. But I also wonder too, this is a guy that just tore his ACL, and he's a captain on this team and has been a captain and traveling with this team. I've seen him at a bunch of different games throughout the year. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, it could happen. I don't know. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know. And that's kind of where I'm going to go with that. And finally, the onside kick was a bad decision. I'm not a big fan that they kicked it right in the air, but they had to, the season's so gone, Daniel, that I don't know. I just thought it was an option to try, and they tried it. Well, thank you all for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow. We're going to recap BC Cornell, start to prepare for this weekend's game against NC State, where they're 17.5 point underdogs. Whew, that's ugly. But you'll see why when we get into it this week, and we'll talk about everything in between. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. Take care, everyone.